Welcome to the evening service of Immanuel Baptist Church. We'll be singing song number 29, I Sing the Mighty Power of God.
Good to see you all here this evening. Please open your Bibles to Mark chapter 1. It's Mark chapter 1. Welcome back to our study through the book of Mark. Last week we took a break for the Lord's Supper to observe Lord's Supper. And if you remember previously in our study, we had just witnessed Jesus' call to his disciples. He called his disciples to ministry, and we learned some valuable lessons about making disciples. We learned to reach out to interested people, to welcome them to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and to offer opportunities to learn and minister to others in order to spread the message that has made a difference in their lives and to perpetuate the ministry. Today, we're still in chapter 1, and we're still observing the beginnings of Jesus' ministries. We've seen Jesus' entrance with John the Baptist and the declaration of the identity of Christ. We saw Jesus' preparation as he went through the temptation in the wilderness, and we saw Jesus call his disciples and really officially begin his ministry. And today we're going to see Jesus in action for the first time. Till now, he's just been preparing for the ministry. He's getting established. He's making himself known. But today he's going to start ministering with the disciples, and we're going to discover through what we see today that Jesus is the unknown meter of needs. He is the unknown meter of needs. Let's read our passage. That's Mark chapter 1, verses 21 through 34. And it says, "And they went into Capernaum, and straightway on the Sabbath day he entered into the synagogue and taught. And they were astonished at his doctrine, for he taught them as one that had authority, and not as the scribes. And there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, saying, Let us alone. What have we to do with thee, thou Jesus of Nazareth? Art thou come to destroy us? I know thee, who thou art, the Holy One of God. And Jesus rebuked him, saying, Hold thy peace, and come out of him. And when the unclean spirit had torn him, and cried with a loud voice, he came out of him. And they were all amazed, insomuch that they questioned among themselves, saying, What thing is this? What new doctrine is this? For with authority commandeth he even the unclean spirits, and they do obey him. And immediately his fame spread abroad throughout all the region round about Galilee. And forthwith, when they were come out of the synagogue, they entered into the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. But Simon's wife's mother lay sick of a fever, and anon they tell him of her. And he came and took her by the hand, and lifted her up, and immediately the fever left her, and she ministered unto them. And at even, when the sun did set, they brought unto him all that were diseased, and them that were possessed with devils, and all the city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many that were sick of diverse diseases, and cast out many devils, and suffered not the devils to speak, because they knew him. Wow, this sounds like a busy day. Everything that we have read was just one day. And imagine, the first official day on the job included preaching, healing, casting out demons from morning until night. But let's go over some of the things that this busy day included. So after calling his disciples to follow him, Jesus and his disciples went to the nearby city of Capernaum. Capernaum was a Roman garrison town on the northwest shore of the Sea of Galilee. It was the commercial center for the region and was located on the trade route to Damascus. Jesus made Capernaum the center for his ministry round about Galilee, even to the point that Matthew refers to Capernaum as Jesus' city. And this is where the disciples, Peter and Andrew, live. That's where they have their house. They commute from Capernaum to the Sea of Galilee to go fishing, because that's what their livelihood was. So it's not too far from wherever Jesus called the disciples to follow him. And it says that after arriving in Capernaum, the first thing on the Sabbath day, Jesus and his disciples went to the local synagogue, and Jesus preached a message there. And this is Jesus' pattern. This is the pattern that the Apostle Paul followed. If you want to teach Jews, where do you go to find them? You go to the synagogue. And so Jesus, he makes a habit of going to the synagogue to preach his message, to share his good news of the gospel with new people, because that's where he's going to find them. And Jesus, this is his first day. This is the disciples' first day on the job with Jesus. Yeah, up till now, we haven't really seen Jesus do anything, but the focus of Mark is what? The focus of Mark is on those who saw and witnessed the actions of Christ, how they came to know Jesus for who he was. It's the revelation of Jesus' identity through his actions. And so now that the disciples have joined Jesus, they're seeing Jesus in action. And the first thing Jesus does is he goes to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he preaches a message, but he preaches a message unlike they had ever heard before, because he preaches a message with authority. Preaching a message with authority, or a personal authority, probably would have taken these people greatly by surprise. Rabbis did not preach with personal authority. You couldn't take their word for it. You had to take the word of all of the other experts who already had written something down. So a message like what Jesus preached and like what I'm preaching now would have seemed very presumptuous in a first century Jewish synagogue. They would have been like, who is this upstart, and why doesn't he study the other rabbis and speak with some real knowledge. Even today in a Jewish synagogue, a rabbi would be expected to read a passage, quote what many other rabbis before him have said about the passage, and then come to a conclusion by cherry picking the collective wisdom. Am I right? Absolutely. All right, we have some confirmation on that. And this is what Jews still do today. It would be like if I preached all of my messages. According to the photo guide of Israel, Capernaum was an important port city located on the northwest shore of Galilee. And here we see Jesus preach in the synagogue for the first time. And Professor Alan Cole said in his contribution to the Tyndale Commentary series that Jesus' style of teaching greatly differed from traditional rabbinic style, demonstrating that Jesus' message was unique, stirring, controversial, and superior to all messages before him. You would really hate it if I quoted everything, if I couldn't say anything that wasn't already said before, and if all of my conclusions came off of simply what I had read in commentaries. But this is the way the Jewish synagogue operated. You didn't want to be presumptuous and think that, act like you knew everything there was to say about the Bible. You didn't let the Bible speak for itself either. You had to pay your respects to all of the rabbis who had existed before you and who had written something down by reading everything that they had written, quoting the ones that you wanted to quote, and that's where your message actually came from, was from the rabbis and actually less from the scriptures. And that would be painful to us. It would be painful to listen to. It would be painful to preach. I would hate to do it, and outside academic papers, we don't read or speak or even write like that. Yeah, that's the way a first century synagogue would have felt to us if we had sat in one. So the synagogue had become a center for education in Jewish tradition surrounding the Bible, and not really a place where people came to read the Bible itself. So you learned about the Bible. You weren't taught necessarily the Bible. Although a good Jew would have memorized probably, but that's not what you went to synagogue for. You would have been considered an upstart if you preached a message without proving all of your points with quotations from other scholars. And yet Jesus came to the synagogue telling the people what the Bible says, and he said it with authority. He said it without quoting anybody. This is what the Bible has to say about this. And to top it all off, after having preached a message in this new authoritative style, Jesus then casts out a demon from one of the people in the congregation. That would be unique. We would not see anybody attempt to do such a thing here, most likely. It would have been shocking, to say the least. But after Jesus' message, one of the congregants who was there, who was possessed of a demon, starts ranting at Jesus, letting him know that he's not welcome here, and I don't know why you're here, but we don't like you, and what do you got to do with us? And the demon, he gives away the identity of Jesus. He says, I know who you are. You're the Son of God, the Holy One of God. Well, Jesus, he then commands the demon to shut up, basically, and to leave. And he casts the demon out of this person. And Jesus, he wants them to come to their own conclusions based off of the scriptures and what they see Jesus doing, not because of some demon that said that Jesus was the Son of God. But Jesus' actions really get some things going. People start talking. What new teaching style is this? He not only preaches at us authoritatively, but when he gives commands to demons, they obey him. When Jesus preached his message, he probably looked like an upstart at first until he went and cast out a demon. Then that would have got people thinking. He probably looked like an upstart who didn't have enough respect for his elders or his betters, but when he cast out a demon, you can't ignore that. And Jesus, he spoke to them authoritatively, and they're like, I don't know what to do with this. But then he speaks authoritatively to a demon, and the demon obeys him. Well, no doubt it ran through more than one person's mind. He spoke authoritatively to the demon, and the demon listened to him. He spoke authoritatively to me. Should I be listening to him? And so Jesus has got some people thinking. But Jesus, he doesn't dilly-dally after the service. He goes, after preaching at the synagogue, Jesus and his disciples go to Peter and Andrew's house to stay for the Sabbath day. And according to Jewish law and tradition, you couldn't travel on the Sabbath day except to go to the synagogue and back, because you weren't supposed to work, you weren't supposed to travel long distances. The rabbis went and took this to mean, well, the only reason why you should leave your house on Sabbath day is to go to the synagogue, and so that's all you could do on Sabbath day. So you could go to the synagogue, stay there for the service, and come home. And so that's what Jesus and the disciples do. They spend the Sabbath day at Peter and Andrew's house. But when they get to Peter and Andrew's house, they inform Jesus that Peter's mother-in-law is sick with a fever. And Jesus, he hasn't healed sick people yet. We haven't seen any miracles yet. He hasn't done anything miraculous as far as we know. So they're probably just being courteous to Jesus, letting him know there's a sick person in the house. Even though they wouldn't have understood germs or things at that time, nobody really wants to get too close to a sick person. Anyways, so they're probably just letting Jesus know, okay, there's a sick person in the house, you might avoid them, or just be quiet. Not that you could be noisy on the Sabbath anyways, but no doubt to their surprise, Jesus goes to her and takes her by the hand and helps her out of bed. And if they weren't surprised by Jesus wanting to see her, they definitely would have been surprised by Jesus' actions then. Because you don't just pull sick people out of bed. If you were in bed with a fever and just feeling really down, how would you like it if I was like, here, let me help you, pull you right out of bed? You'd probably not be happy with me, send me out of the house, and go right back to bed. But not with Jesus. I can picture Peter cringing, oh, this isn't going to go well with the wife. This is his mother-in-law that Jesus is yanking out of bed while she's sick. But Jesus helps Peter's mother-in-law to her feet, and immediately she's healed from her sickness. With the transformation is as she stands up, and now she's all better. And I like the response of Peter's mother-in-law. Jesus helps her out of bed, and immediately she starts taking care of their needs. She's probably starts doing all the things that her son-in-law forgot to do. Are you hungry? Let me get you a chair. We've got some pre-made matzo ball soup for the Sabbath. Let me get you a bowl. Peter's mother-in-law, doesn't miss a beat. She's not like, wow, there goes my excuse to sleep in. No. She immediately gets to work meeting Jesus' needs and the disciples' needs. And Jesus and his disciples, they spend the rest of the afternoon there at Peter's house, probably resting, chatting. They couldn't leave the house since it was the Sabbath day, so they would have spent the afternoon totally unaware of what's going on outside. While Jesus and the disciples were taking a Sabbath afternoon nap, news was spreading about what happened that morning in the synagogue, particularly that bit about casting out demons. And it seems that news about the healing of Peter's mother-in-law seems to get around too. And on a day when nobody had anything better to do but talk, news spread pretty quickly. Even though you're not supposed to leave your house, I don't know how that worked, but news spread nonetheless. And by evening, when the Sabbath day ends, because a day in the Jewish week is from sundown to sundown. So the Sabbath ends when the sun goes down. And at sundown, by sundown, the whole city knows what happens, and everybody shows up on Peter and Andrew's doorstep, wanting to hear the message from this guy who can cast out demons and perform miracles, and people wanting to have miracles performed. There are people who want demons cast out. They're all there on Jesus or on Peter's porch, wanting to see Jesus. And probably for the rest of the evening, there they are, taking care of the needs of the people, healing people, casting out demons, teaching them the message that Jesus would have preached in the synagogue. This time, Jesus tells the demons ahead of time, don't say anything about his identity, because he wants people to come to that conclusion on their own. But this is a busy day. The time for this message is almost out, and all I've done is rehearse to you what Jesus did. But what can we gather from the events of Jesus' first day in ministry with his disciples? Well, in each of these situations that Jesus found himself in, he was the unknown meter of needs. With the demon-possessed man, Jesus was the unknown meter of spiritual needs. He met spiritual needs, but the demon-possessed person doesn't seem to be aware that he had the need. He's also not aware that Jesus can fix the need. The demon-possessed man didn't see Jesus as the meter of his needs, and in fact, he probably didn't see that he had any needs to be met at all, because here he is, he's demon-possessed, but he's in the most spiritual place that the whole city has. He's in the synagogue, and he's accepted, and he talks about the congregation as, what do you have to do with us? He's identifying himself with the congregation there. He seems perfectly comfortable. Nobody's confronted him with about his demon possession. He probably didn't even think that he had a need. But Jesus was the meter of his needs. Jesus was the only one who could meet that person's needs. And he was able to cast that demon out. And, if he didn't realize he had a problem before, I'm sure that once it was gone, he noticed the difference. Have you ever had a problem where you didn't really realize that it was a problem, or it was really all that big of a problem until there was a remedy for it? I remember I worked on a farm, a produce farm, and it was October, and it was cold, and we were doing harvest, and the first thing we do, we go out there and we're busting up the frozen dirt to pull carrots, and my hands are ice cold, but I don't really feel it. It didn't really bother me until I went and made a delivery of the carrots to the wash station, and they had a heater there. And I went and stood in front of the heater, and I was like, man, I didn't realize how cold I was. And the heater starts, I only got half warmed up, and then I had to go back out, and then it was just miserable. Because now I'm like, man, I am cold. But sometimes we don't realize we even have a need until the need has been met. And Jesus was the unknown meter of spiritual needs for this man. He didn't know he had the need, but Jesus met the need. He didn't know he had a need, and he didn't know that Jesus could meet his needs, but when Jesus met his needs, there was a change in his life. With the congregation at the synagogue, Jesus was the unknown meter of directive needs. The congregation at the synagogue that Jesus attended that morning had a dearth of leadership and direction. They've got a million voices. They've got every rabbi who ever wrote anything down telling them what they need to do, how they need to do it. And their lives were very tedious. From the time they woke up to the time they went to bed, all the rituals, all the little laws, all the million extra commandments that the rabbis told them that they had to follow, their lives were tedious, and yet they were still without any real direction. And this is evidenced by the demon-possessed man who was a member of their congregation. They didn't even know what to do with him. They're like, we can't fix you, so just make yourself at home, get comfortable. We've got problems too. The Jews, they had dozens of authorities and leaders. They probably never thought that they lacked the authority or leadership, yet none of their leaders or authorities could command demons to leave. And the Jews were in desperate need of leadership and guidance, and Jesus was showing them that, exposing it to them by giving them a taste of what true leadership and true authority would be like. And Jesus, though they didn't know it, was the person who could meet their needs. He was unknown, the unknown meter of needs. He could meet their directive needs, yet they didn't know it. But Jesus is showing them what he could do. Then with Peter's mother-in-law, Jesus was the unknown meter of physical needs or of personal needs. Jesus had never healed anybody before, and Peter's mother-in-law would not have known that this stranger that her son-in-law had given up fishing to go follow was the one who could meet her needs. Yet Jesus surprised everybody by healing her from her fever. So even in our own lives, Jesus is sometimes the unknown meter of our needs. We have needs, but we don't realize that we have those needs, or we don't realize that Jesus is the one who can meet those needs. Yet Jesus is the one who can meet your needs, whether they be spiritual, whether they be authoritative or directional, whether they be physical or personal needs. Jesus can meet your needs. Jesus has the answers to your problems. How will you respond? The demon-possessed person didn't want Jesus to meet his needs. I'm not interested. I don't like you. Why don't you just go away? What have you got to do with us? The congregation had needs, yet they weren't sure if they wanted Jesus' solution. They debated it, they talked about it, they discussed it. Man, what's this new teaching style? What's this new doctrine? I haven't heard this one before. They were willing to discuss it, but they weren't necessarily willing to commit to it. But when it comes to Peter's mother-in-law, you don't have too many Peter-in-laws. But when it comes to Peter's mother-in-law, she just simply accepted that Jesus is the one who could meet her needs. And she did what she could to serve him in return. Jesus is the one who can meet your needs, whether it be spiritual, whether it be authoritative or directional, whether it be personal or physical. God can meet your needs. How will you respond? Let's pray. Dear Father, we thank you, God, that you do care for us and that you do meet our needs and that you have met the needs of so many people before us and that you will meet the needs of so many people after us. And Father, help us, though, to turn to you and ask for help. Help us to recognize that you are the one who can meet our needs. Help us to see the needs that we have and ask for your help. Help us to trust you because we know that you do love us and that you are the one who can meet our needs. And may we turn to you for that. In Jesus' name.